Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, September the 29th, 2025. It will be a short video. I will begin with a preview of the main astrological events taking place over the course of a week, and then I will do an I Ching reading for the week, and this I Ching reading will have four sections. Firstly, a general section, then money, then career and business, and finally relationships. So let's start off by looking at the astrology of the week ahead. So here is the chart for the week, starting at midnight on Monday, September the 29th. This chart is set for New York. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So looking at this chart, the very beginning of a week, the moon is in late Sagittarius, getting ready to move into Capricorn. And this tells us that we've got a first quarter moon. So when the moon moves into Capricorn, it makes a square to the sun. And so, we had a new moon, which was a partial eclipse around a week ago. And the moon is waxing. The moon is waxing. It's getting larger in the sky. And now we have that moon square sun. And so, what that means is that perhaps it's a time for action. That partial eclipse may have been a bit disorientating for many of us. I certainly found it perhaps rather difficult and rather distracting. And so the question is, what does one do with this new moon? Where is this lunar cycle taking us? And this first quarter moon might tell us. And you could say that moon in Capricorn is challenging the sun in Libra. So the sun in Libra is, you could say, quite accommodating. It's a very social placement for the sun, but square the moon in Capricorn. Moon in Capricorn can be quite self-interested. So we can only be accommodating up to a point, and perhaps we do have to think about our own vital interests, and there may be room for a bit of selfishness there with the moon in Capricorn. I mean, we can't think about other people all the time. Sometimes we do have to think about what is important to us. And following on from moon square sun, we have Mercury square Jupiter. So as we move into the middle of a week, so as we move into October, Mercury makes a square to Jupiter. And, this Mercury square Jupiter, Mercury in Libra square Jupiter in Cancer, you could look at it in a very obvious way. Mercury square Jupiter. Jupiter is a planet of excess. Might be about just talking too much. We've got lots of things to say, and perhaps we've got too much to say, and perhaps we need to be more reserved. I mean, that's one way in which Mercury square Jupiter could work. It could be about our own thoughts and what we're thinking about, and we might be trying our hardest to be reasonable and logical, Mercury in Libra, but then Jupiter in Cancer comes along. It's something we don't quite understand because Jupiter is in Cancer. It's in a water sign, and so there could be a certain sort of interplay between our thoughts and our emotions. And Jupiter additionally has a moral dimension. And so perhaps some of our ideas, they might be very interesting to us, but we're also questioning whether they're right. I mean, morally right. And I don't know, that's an issue that, I often think about. Maybe that's because I'm a Gemini, and there's a lot of things I can think about, and I do think about, and one has ideas, but then one thinks, is that right? Is that really the right thing to do? So that is a way in which Mercury square Jupiter could be working. And then on, I think, Thursday, Venus moves on through Virgo, and it gets to around 16 Virgo, and it starts making a sesquiquadrate to Pluto. And Venus sesquiquadrate Pluto, you can say all the usual Venus-Pluto stuff, like it's quite obsessive, it may link with relationships, it may be quite jealous, and that's certainly true. Although it might just highlight Pluto. Pluto is kind of in the spotlight at the moment. It may not feel like it, but it kind of is. I mean, you think about last week, there was a square between Mars and Pluto. And when that Mars-Pluto happened, pretty much the exact moment that Mars-Pluto square happened was when you had that shooting in Dallas, when someone opened fire on an ICE office. And also last week you had Keir Starmer introducing his ideas about having a digital ID card in the UK. Now that's a very Pluto in Aquarius thing to want to do. Just remember, Aquarius is a sign that can be connected with totalitarianism. Don't forget Saturn rules Aquarius. It can also be a sign linked with the desire for freedom. So there is this contradictory feel to Aquarius, and Pluto in Aquarius is really highlighting this contradiction. So maybe Venus in Virgo's sesquiquadrate Pluto is just going to highlight Pluto, and we realize, hey, Pluto is in Aquarius. What's happening? What's going on? Maybe we don't like what is happening, and we may feel we need to protest. We need to stand up for ourselves. But I'll be talking about Pluto in Aquarius, I think, in my next video, in my video for Monday. How Pluto in Aquarius is showing itself, so far. Pluto's only just gone into Aquarius. It went into Aquarius sort of less than a year ago, and maybe many of us are still getting used to it. Then on Friday we have got Mercury making a biquintile to Uranus, and Mercury biquintile Uranus, that might be about what we are trying to say. We're trying to make an impact. We're trying to be listened to. And it may not be easy, but there's always a way of being listened to. There's always a way of communicating a powerful message, but we do have to work on it. And then finally, end of the week, we've got Mercury quincunx Saturn. So Mercury now at the end of Libra, making a quincunx to Saturn at the end of Pisces. And Mercury quincunx Saturn may not be the greatest aspect, and it could be about reality. We have ideas. Mercury in Libra, we try to be easygoing, but there's something we have to take on board. It's that Saturn. Saturn could be discipline, it could be restriction, it could be just reality, the times in which we are living. And it's not that we have to abandon our ideas or just accept that everything is hopeless. In fact, we have to keep our ideas and at the same time address reality, as we find it. And also with this aspect, Mercury, very late Libra. This tells us that Mercury is about to change sign. Mercury is getting ready to move into Scorpio, and that is something we perhaps need to get ready for. Of course, it's another planet moving into Scorpio. Mars is already in Scorpio. Mercury is about to join it. So, overall, looking at what's going on this week astrologically, I would have said that there's not a great deal going on. There are a few aspects that are worthy of comment, but at least astrologically, it doesn't seem to be particularly spectacular. Although I will be going into sort of detail when I do my daily readings. So let me now turn to the I Ching. So with the I Ching, my usual reminder: if you don't want your I Ching done, you don't have to have it done. This I Ching section, is about people who are actually watching the video. If you don't watch this video, then I Ching doesn't apply to you. So if you don't want your I Ching read, then you can stop watching the video now. So I asked the question: what is the week starting on Monday, September the 29th, going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And don't forget, this section has 4 parts: general, then money, then career, and finally relationships. So the first hexagram I got was a hexagram 62, preponderance of the small. So this gives us, a general idea about what the week is going to be like. Now, there are no moving lines here, nothing. And preponderance of the small is a fairly downbeat hexagram. It's not about anything going on. And so if you've got high hopes for the week ahead, perhaps you should tone them down. I think it's just going to be difficult to get anything done, and we can try if you want. You can try as hard as you like, but I think you might be disappointed, and you might even be exposing yourself to danger, because one of the images of this hexagram is the bird. The bird is a very important part of this hexagram, and it's talking about a bird that should be staying low, doesn't want to go too high. And of course, there are problems with a bird that goes too high. For a start, it needs to have somewhere to rest. We're not talking about an albatross that is circumnavigating the globe all the time. We're talking about, a smaller bird that needs to sort of land every now and then. And so this bird needs to keep close to ground, needs to keep close to branches, things it can perhaps places it can build its nest. And also, if a bird goes too high, it makes itself visible, and it makes itself vulnerable to hunters. So the safest place for the bird is to stay low, to hide in the bushes, wherever birds need to go to protect themselves from danger. And if you take on too much, it's not going to work, or at least it's unlikely to work. So you should be satisfying yourself with small gains, across the board. And because we only have a locked hexagram, this hexagram does not move to any other hexagram. It's worth looking at the nuclear hexagram, the hexagram in the middle, if we knock off the top and bottom lines. And the nuclear hexagram of preponderance of the small is preponderance of the great. And preponderance of the great, it's not the hexagram itself, it's not the reading for the week, but it's kind of a thing that we should be aware of and perhaps worried about, and it's perhaps the background. And the background is that there are huge things going on around us, maybe, and we just haven't got the energy to deal with it all. Sometimes we can deal with it. And preponderance of the great, represents this sort of huge load. You've got 4 unbroken lines in the middle, and it's just too much to bear. And if we were to try to take up a big load, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. We'd have to give up, or worse still, we might do ourselves an injury, which takes us back to preponderance of the small. And so, if you follow that, if you follow the path of that cautious bird, sticking to the ground, not going too far up, certainly not going high in the sky, exposing itself to danger and removing itself from the security of a branch. It needs to land, and that's where it needs to be. So that's the general picture. And when it comes to money, it's a similar picture. You might have ideas about money. You might think that you want to do stuff. You might see opportunities for making money, for even risking money even. You might want to take a chance. You might want to invest money in something. I'm not giving any investment advice here, by the way. I'm talking about something very theoretical, but the general advice here is not to do anything dramatic with money. Yeah, you might have plans. It might be a big expenditure that you're thinking about, and you're wondering, well, this is the week to do it, to sign on a dotted line, to make a commitment. But I would advise against that. And there are no moving lines, and I think deep down, with this hexagram, preponderance of the great, you kind of know that to some extent you are overextended, or you could very quickly become overextended. So I think the message is pretty clear. Just keep it simple, be modest, and don't overburden yourself financially. And turning to career and business, well, it's the same. Don't overdo it. You know what you can do. So if you have a job, you're going into work, you know what you can do. And it's not a time to be taking on new responsibilities, trying your hand at a task that you've never done before, meeting new people. I don't think it would be successful. And what you don't want to do, if you have a job, if you're at work, is you don't want to expose yourself to criticism and to attack. So you could fly too high. You could take on a lot, and it might not work, and you might get the blame. So that would be a potential problem there. So just do keep it simple. And finally, there's relationships, and I have to say, preponderance of the small. Don't take on too much. It's not a time for to get close to anyone new. It's not a time for escalating a relationship, getting closer to someone, because there are risks here. You need to focus on what is right in front of you. Relate to people in the way you related to them in the past. And if someone is pressurizing you to get closer for whatever reason, then hold back, because if you overcommit, if you give stuff away, if you're too trusting, then I think it could go wrong. So it's not a real problem really, because there are no moving lines here. And so if you are cautious, that's going to be fine. You're not going to be bothered. And next week could be very different. But overall this week, whatever we're talking about, whether it's money, career, relationships, something else, just keep it simple. Don't expect anything. Don't overextend yourself. And if you can do that, then I think that the week should be okay. So that's it. That's all I've got to say for this week. I hope you have a great week. Well, I'm not saying you're going to have a great week, because I don't think it's going to be a great week. I think it's certainly from an I Ching perspective, there's just not a great deal going on. But I don't think it's going to be a bad week either. It's just going to be a bit, neither one thing nor the other. So thanks very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description. And I will talk to you again very soon.